It all began with a late-night Facebook post, a post that seemed ordinary at first glance, just another status update buried in the endless scroll of social media. But this one was different. The words were chilling, vague yet personal. You think you got away with it, but the truth always finds a way out. It wasn't signed. No names were mentioned. Just a line posted on a local community page that normally shared things like lost pets, garage sales, and bake sales. Within minutes, the post began to stir whispers across the town. People commented, speculated, and tagged one another, wondering who the message was aimed at. The small suburban town hadn't seen a major crime in years. But those who had lived there long enough remembered the one case that still haunted everyone: the unsolved disappearance of Emily Carter, a 23-year-old college student who vanished after a night out with friends almost a decade earlier. Her face had been plastered across missing posters, her name repeated on the local news, and her story debated in online forums. But as time passed, the investigation grew cold. Eventually, Emily became just another unsolved mystery, a name people whispered about but never expected answers for. So when that cryptic Facebook post appeared, speculation quickly circled back to Emily's case. Could it be connected? Or was it just some cruel joke? The local police department dismissed it at first. To them, social media was full of noise, attention seekers, trolls, and conspiracy theorists. But as the post gained traction, more details emerged. The user who posted it had a newly created account with no profile picture, no friends, and no history, almost as if it was made solely for this purpose. And then, something even stranger happened. A second post appeared. This time, it included a photo. The image wasn't immediately recognizable, but sharp-eyed residents quickly realized what they were looking at. A picture of the woods just outside town, an area that had been heavily searched during the initial investigation into Emily's disappearance. The caption under the photo read, "You stopped looking too soon." The town was shaken. Was someone taunting the police? Or was this a real clue, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally connect the dots? The Facebook community page exploded with comments. Some begged for the truth to finally come out. Others accused the anonymous poster of being cruel, reopening old wounds for Emily's family. And yet, many couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was behind the account knew something. For Emily's parents, the posts reopened the grief they had tried so hard to bury. They reached out to law enforcement, demanding the case be looked at again. The police reluctantly agreed, assigning a small team to review the evidence, comb through the Facebook activity, and revisit the woods mentioned in the post. That night, as the community buzzed with speculation, one chilling thought hung in the air. If the Facebook posts were telling the truth, then Emily's case wasn't just an unsolved disappearance. It was a murder hidden in plain sight, and someone online had just lit the fuse that would blow it all wide open. For decades, the disappearance of Rachel Whitman had been a painful mystery. Her face had been printed on missing person flyers, her name whispered in hushed tones around Clearwater, a quiet suburban town that had once been considered the kind of place where bad things just didn't happen. But Rachel's sudden disappearance in 1999 shattered that illusion. Police had followed leads, interviewed dozens of people, even drained a nearby lake, but nothing ever stuck. Eventually, the case went cold. Families moved on. The town grew busier. New houses went up. But for Rachel's mother, Elaine Whitman, time never healed the wound. Every holiday felt incomplete. Every family photo missing her daughter's smile. Then, nearly 25 years later, the unthinkable happened. It started with a simple Facebook post. A memory resurfaces. It was a Thursday evening when Maria Sanchez, a Clearwater native who had long since moved to Chicago, stumbled across an old photograph in a shoebox. It was from a high school party in the late 90s. Kids with red Solo cups, flannel shirts, and butterfly clips. Pure nostalgia. But as Maria flipped through the stack, she froze. There, on the edge of the frame, was Rachel Whitman. Not posed, not smiling, just captured in a fleeting second, her eyes wide, as if startled. And next to her, a shadowy figure whose face was turned slightly toward the camera. Maria almost dismissed it, thinking it was just another relic of teenage years. But something about the man's face nagged at her. She scanned it again, her gut tightening. She couldn't shake the thought, I know that face. So, almost without thinking, she snapped a picture of the photo and uploaded it to Facebook with a caption. Throwback to the Clearwater High Party in '99. Crazy times. But wait, does anyone else notice who's in the corner here? Isn't that Rachel Whitman? The girl who went missing. The internet reacts. At first, it seemed like just another nostalgic post. Old classmates commented with laughing emojis and inside jokes. But soon, someone tagged Clearwater Missing Persons, a small advocacy page run by local volunteers. Within hours, the post had dozens of shares. By the next morning, it had gone viral within the community. People began zooming in on the figure next to Rachel. Speculation ran wild in the comments. That looks like Tommy Blake. He was at that party. Didn't he leave town right after graduation? No way, that's not Tommy. That's Mr. Harris, the gym teacher. Remember how weird he was? Wait, wasn't Rachel last seen leaving that party? Theories spread like wildfire. Amateur sleuths dissected every pixel of the photo, running it through filters, adjusting the contrast, and posting their findings. By the end of the weekend, the once-forgotten case of Rachel Whitman had become the town's top topic. Rachel's family speaks out. When Elaine Whitman first saw the post, her hands trembled. She hadn't expected to see her daughter's face suddenly appear in her feed, frozen in time, a haunting reminder of that night. I can't explain the feeling, she later told a local reporter. It was like opening an old wound, but also hope. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe people cared again. Maybe someone would finally talk. Elaine made her own post, thanking Maria for sharing the photo and pleading with the community. If you recognize anyone in this picture, please come forward. No matter how small the detail, it could be what we've waited decades for. That heartfelt message turned the Facebook thread into something bigger. Local news stations picked it up, then regional outlets. Before long, national journalists were covering the story of the Facebook photo that might solve a cold case. Police take notice. Detective Aaron Collins, who had just taken over cold case assignments in Clearwater, admitted he was skeptical at first. Social media often generated more noise than actual leads. But when the photo landed on his desk, he looked closely. The figure next to Rachel wasn't clear, but the shape of the jawline, the build, it was enough to stir a memory. Collins dug into old reports from 1999, and there it was, a name that had surfaced briefly in witness statements but had never been fully investigated. A man who had since left Clearwater, whose connection to Rachel had been downplayed at the time. Someone who, thanks to Facebook, was now thrust back into the spotlight. The turning point. Within days, tips began pouring in. Former classmates remembered details they had long buried, things they had dismissed as irrelevant or been too scared to mention at the time. One message stood out. I don't want to put my name on this, but I remember seeing Rachel leave the party that night. She wasn't alone. She was with him. The person attached a name, the same name Detective Collins had flagged. Suddenly, the case that had been ice-cold for decades was red-hot again. And all because one woman decided to upload an old photo to Facebook. Suspense builds. As the photo continued to circulate, the mystery figure's identity became the subject of heated debate. Every share, every comment added fuel to the fire. Online sleuths began creating timelines, cross-referencing who attended that fateful party, and even digging through yearbooks to match faces. Rachel's story had gone from forgotten tragedy to viral obsession. But with all the noise, one critical question loomed. Would this online frenzy actually lead to justice, or just another dead end? Detective Collins wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. The Facebook post had given him leverage. People who had stayed silent for years were now talking. And the man at the center of suspicion? He couldn't hide forever. What no one knew was that this post was just the beginning. Behind the screen, secrets were about to unravel. Secrets darker than anyone had imagined. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. For weeks, the Facebook post sat quietly in the depths of the internet. The family had reposted it several times, urging people to share, hoping for a miracle. But then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, something happened. A stranger's comment appeared beneath the post. At first glance, it didn't seem extraordinary. Just a few words typed casually. "This reminds me of someone I knew years ago. Same scar, same eyes." It could have been dismissed as another dead-end lead, but the details were too specific to ignore. The stranger even attached an old photo from their personal collection, one that looked eerily similar to the missing person's last known pictures. The family froze when they saw it. Could this really be him? Or was it another case of mistaken identity fueled by the internet's wild imagination? The police reluctantly pulled back into the case, began to take notice. What had once been considered a cold trail was suddenly hot again. Investigators cross-referenced the photo with the case file, comparing scars, moles, and even the unique tilt of the man's jawline. Everything lined up too perfectly to dismiss. But there was still a problem. The comment hinted at a connection to a small town hundreds of miles away. If the lead was genuine, the missing person hadn't just disappeared. He had started a whole new life in the shadows. The detective assigned to the case admitted he'd never seen anything like it. A single comment on a years-old post had breathed new life into a file that had collected dust for far too long. Yet, beneath the excitement, a haunting question lingered. If this man had been alive all this time, why hadn't he come home? The Facebook sleuths exploded with theories. Some believed he was hiding from danger. Others suggested he was escaping a secret past. And a darker few whispered that maybe he wasn't a victim at all, but the one holding the darkest secret. The small town mentioned in the Facebook comment seemed like the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Rows of modest houses, a single main street lined with diners and hardware stores, and neighbors who waved at everyone they passed. It was the last place anyone expected to find answers to a decades-old mystery. Yet, when investigators quietly arrived, they realized the town had been keeping secrets. People knew a man who fit the description, a man who had lived there for years under a different name. He worked odd jobs, kept mostly to himself, and was known for wearing long sleeves even on the hottest days. When shown the old missing person's photo, several townsfolk nodded in recognition. One local woman remembered him vividly. "He kept to himself," she said, "but I'll never forget the scar. Same place, same shape." The detectives' suspicions grew stronger. They dug deeper, tracking employment records, utility bills, even library cards. The man they were following had slipped into this town almost a decade ago, with no trace of his past before then. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. When police knocked on the door of his small rented home, there was no answer. Inside, however, neighbors reported hearing hurried movements, as if someone was packing or slipping out the back. Within hours, the town was buzzing with rumors. The quiet man wasn't who they thought he was. The family back home waited anxiously. Could it really be him after all these years? The Facebook post that had once been a desperate plea was now pulling at the threads of an unraveling double life. But then came the twist. Records showed the man in the town had once gone by another name, a name connected to a criminal past. Suddenly, the case shifted. What if the missing person hadn't just vanished but had chosen to disappear? The investigators pressed forward, torn between relief at finally finding answers and dread about what those answers might reveal. For the first time in years, the cold case was burning hot. And as police closed in on the man's new identity, one terrifying thought lingered. Had they been searching for a victim all this time, or a fugitive hiding in plain sight? The man the neighborhood once described as harmless and ordinary was about to be exposed. Detectives, armed with a warrant, searched his home. At first glance, it looked normal. Clean carpets, family photos, and neatly stacked bookshelves. But the deeper they went, the more the illusion cracked. In the basement, they found something chilling. Hidden behind a false wall was a makeshift room lined with soundproofing. Inside were items belonging to missing people. Jewelry, shoes, and even a driver's license belonging to the jogger whose clothing had been discovered in the woods. The polite neighbor was no longer just odd. He was a predator who had hidden in plain sight for years. Neighbors who once waved to him in the mornings were now reeling in horror. Parents who once trusted him to mow their lawns or help with small repairs now realized they had unknowingly let a killer into their lives. When police confronted him with the evidence, he stayed eerily calm. His only words were, "I wondered how long it would take you." The trial that followed gripped the entire country. Prosecutors painted him as a man who blended perfectly into suburbia while feeding a violent obsession. His victims weren't strangers from distant cities. They were locals, people who had trusted him, who believed Willow Creek was safe. The jury didn't take long. He was convicted on multiple counts of murder, his calm demeanor finally cracking as the sentence of life without parole was read aloud. But even with the conviction, the scars in Willow Creek never truly healed. The neighborhood that once prided itself on trust and safety would forever carry the memory of what had happened in the shadows. And for many, the most haunting part wasn't just what he did. It was how close he had been the entire time. Because sometimes the most dangerous killers aren't the ones hiding in the woods. They're the ones living right next door. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell.